Welcome back, nerds. Fino here with a guide for the most dangerous Caren, the child of Kirei Kotomine and Rei Ayanami. Man, these Evangelion rebuilds really went off the rails, huh? Caren is a limited 5-star ruler introduced in the Bitter Valentine's event, and she features an absolutely packed kit with both farming and defensive utility. She also makes history as being Fate Grand Order's very first quick ruler. But will it be enough to make her stand out in a year full of power picks? Let's find out. Caren's first skill is Shroud of Valentinus. It's a 3-hit invuln for herself, 1-hit invuln for the rest of her team, and NP gain for the rest of her team but not herself. Also sucks 10% charge from her other teammates at the end of every turn for 3 turns. You may have noticed that the skill description on NA is different, implying that Caren gets the NP gain effect. As far as I could tell, that's just a translation error, so something to keep in mind. Caren is big on these double-sided offensive-defensive effects, and while this makes her kit extremely versatile, sometimes it's a bit jank and she can potentially trip over herself. This goes beyond the opportunity cost element of not having your invuln when you need it, but she drains charge from her teammates repeatedly. That's fine when you're trying to farm, but let's say your Scotty is NP1. She has Gate of Sky up, and you need it next turn to dodge a noble Phantasm. You need it because the skill is on cooldown. But Shroud of Valentinus has been running and it drains her, putting her at 90%. That's the sort of thing you need to watch out for. Next up is Golden Arrow. It's a taunt, 30% battery, and it comes with a suite of AoE debuffs, charge drain and attack and defense reductions. In boss fights you can combo this with Shroud of Valentinus to stuff multiple single target NPs, and the battery of course is a nice get for farming scenarios. Rounding out Caren's regular skills is Mana Burst Love. It gives 3 turns of rainbow buffs and comes with a personal 20% battery, also a charge drain against your targeted enemy. That's right, a second battery and a second charge reduction skill. All this talk about batteries brings us to our noble Phantasm, the greatest hits, Calling Agape. On release, this is an AoE quick attack that reduces quick resistance and applies 1 stack of buff block. These effects happen after the hit, but the overcharge effect goes preemptively. It's NP damage. Only 1 turn tragically, so Caren can't snowball. A hypothetically spammable AoE buff block absolutely has its uses, and it's something you can even do at NP1 if you need to. That said, you probably want more than 1 copy because initially, this NP is a bit on the anemic side. You'll be struggling to kill much of anything with Caren, but it eventually gets an upgrade that spikes up the damage modifier and also adds an additional effect, anti-chaotic damage. Chaotic enemies are a dime a dozen, so you can expect a nice chunk of damage around next year's Valentine's event. The only AoE ruler that outdamages her is actually Summer's Scotty, believe it or not. In going cross-class, Caren's upgraded damage is only a bit lower than that of our boy Eddie Dantes, so she hits fairly hard if you stay the course. And because she has so many ways of cheating out additional charge, she even has the potential to run CEs aside from Kaleidoscope. So even now in her weaker state, you have the potential to run more aggressive options like Traces of Christmas's Past or even Black Grail, though your ability to 3-turn farm with these is gonna vary. If you were so inclined, you could even do Lakshmi Bai strats and run a 3rd charger like Castoria, but instead of doing it just to loop in the first place, you can actually get something out of it. I'm not gonna talk at length about Caren farming, but I will mention one thing. Because she takes charge from her other supports, you're encouraged to run a Scotty with a maxed out starting charge Append skill. More than that, you're encouraged to have a friend list with Scotties that all have the maxed out charge Append too. Either that or you get a ruler Scotty and do it yourself on both chargers. But my point is that if you want to get the most out of Caren, odds are you'll want to get your friends list to play along. Caren has a very interesting set of passives. On one hand, you have straightforward utility in the form of item construction for raw debuff chance to pair with her various skills. Iron Faith gives her complete fear and charm immunity, the former relating to delayed stuns. Also comes with buster resistance to boot. Given that Caren fancies herself as having anti-boss utility, those immunities may come up in unexpected places. Funny enough, Caren has one passive that gives her debuff resistance and another that reduces it, leaving you with a small net gain. However, the skill that reduces her resistance, Masochistic Medium's Nature, also comes with a very unusual effect. It gives her a 20% attack increase when she's debuffed. There are ways of getting debuffs on your own team via servant skills, but why bother with all that shit? You know how Avengers have that passive that reduces your team's debuff resistance? Well, apparently that works from them just being on your team. They don't even have to be on the field. And what's the lowest cost Avenger? It's Angra Mainyu. So shove them at the ass end of your team and reap the profits. Failing that, Salieri also has an Avenger passive, and as a 3-star, he won't eat up your deployment limit either. The best part is that the Avenger passive works even while they're dead. So in boss fights you can even put a Guda poster girl on your Avenger of choice to make them absorb any early NPs. But let's say, for the sake of argument, that you don't have room in your backline because you're overbonding every right to servant. Very specific, I know, but there's no room on the bus for Angry Man. What do? Well, you know what else counts as a debuff? The end of turn damage from Black Grail. Oh yes, your reward for running one of the strongest damage CEs in the game is to get even more damage. So suffice to say, Black Grail is an outstanding value on Caren. But if your sexy evil homunculus collection is looking a little slim, I'm sorry to say your pickings aren't great. Most CEs with debuffs are either really bad or they give some effect you wouldn't want on Caren in the first place. This is Athrinzala. It sucks ass. But if I understand right, it has a defense debuff that should activate Caren's passive. Though just between you and me, I suspect you'd be losing more damage by running it over a generic pick. Her Bond CE technically works too, but it's got its own kind of jank. It gives your party increased NP gain from being hit. Not from attacking, being hit. And it reduces her defense. The premise of having Caren take additional damage so she can get more charge is just a little insane. But the bigger issue is that Bond CEs have horrifically bad stat lines, meaning you A, get a paltry 100 extra health when you kinda want more to make up for the defense you just lost, and B, have exactly 100 extra attack to work with. Remember that pre-buff Caren has some pretty serious damage issues as it stands, so gimming her stat line with a Bond CE is not doing her any favors. In terms of Append skills, you'll want to prioritize her starting charge. It's not such a big deal if you have a maxed out K-scope, but 0-star scopes and every other craft essence can benefit from the cushion, doubly so if you're trying to farm with them. Caren's anti-class Append targets archers. Since you're using Caren as a generalist farmer, you can actually get use out of this. That said, there are two really good 4-star quick lancers that fill this niche as it stands, so if you already have a decent Valkyrie or Bravati, then you may be better off holding onto those servant coins. Command code wise, you can run NP damage options like Da Vinci, but Mage of Flowers is another intriguing option. Not for her, but for her teammates. Because she's a quick servant, Caren can't cheese 20% charge onto her allies via arts chains, but for longer fights or in combination with the level 1 starting charge append, you can give her something to drain. That ally drain is really such a weird thing. Having it is a net positive, but she has to jump through so many hoops to exploit it, and the source of her woes comes down in many ways to being a quick servant. No NP arts chains, Scotty doesn't have a wide battery like Astoria, and Caren actually has to trade off between reliability and damage in terms of her CEs, though I can't overstate that having that choice in the first place is kind of astonishing for a potential quick farmer. But imagine if she were an arts attacker instead. With that many ways of cheating charge and an AoE buff block on her noble Phantasm, she would have been nuts. It's almost like they made her as an arts character and realized, holy shit, if we release this, then no one's gonna buy that Ruler Moriarty we've been cooking up for next year. So they had to kneecap her with a quick stick. But even with that in mind, I think she's pretty solid. She operates as both a farmer and an anti-boss utility pick. The multiple batteries, the enemy charge drains, the invuln taunt package. There's a degree of anti-synergy in her kit because of its dual function, but if you can play around that jank, Caren does reward people who are willing to make that investment. Speaking of which, you'll want at least NB2 so you can buoy her on release damage. But if you stay the course, she'll get her buff and you'll have a lot more power to play around with. And given the breadth of her skill set, she ages reasonably well and you can take her into a lot of content. Tragically, despite all her uses and power, I'd say Caren is just barely on the indulgent side of this year's roster. Koyanskaya, the Lost Belt 6 servants, and the summer lineup make for some absolutely brutal competition. But if you have quartz to spare from the Meta Sheep Fund, the road less traveled may prove to be a rewarding one. Thanks for watching. Like if you enjoyed this video, subscribe for more, and come watch me at twitch.tv/Finotaisen where I stream every weekend, 3 p.m. Pacific time, Friday through Sunday. This week I'll be rolling for Caren herself, so stop on by to see how that goes. I've also been putting up some Fate memes and highlights on my second channel if you prefer me a little less sane. See you there.